Hello and welcome to TelecomTV. I'm Martin Warwick and we're reporting from the OPNFV summit here in Berlin in Germany, and we're having a panel discussion. 3 members, I'll introduce them in a moment. We're looking at MANO, multiple approaches, one goal, question mark. Well, we shall see about that in a moment. First to the panel. On my left is an old friend, well, old, not as old as me, that's for sure, but we've known each other for a long time. We have indeed. Yeah. Diego Lopez of Telefonica. Hi, Diego, good to see you. Next on your left is Deng Hui of China Mobile. We haven't met before, but welcome indeed. And on your left is Martin Backstrom of Ericsson. Martin, welcome also.
Thank you.
So let's get into this now. OPNFV aims to produce a reference management and orchestration implementation for NFV. And since last year, when the OPNFV board increased its scope to include NFV MANO, several upstream open source projects have been created to develop MANO status. And that's unusual. It's very atypical of a body like this to be looking at upstream projects along the way. And it's significant in many ways. And the first question I have for you, and I think I'll ask you, Diego, because I always like to get you started early. Why is there the need then, given what's going on, why is there the need for so many varieties of Open MANO?
Well, I start by saying that there are not so many to start with. We're talking about probably, if we stretch the concept, we're talking about 4, if I remember well. OSM, OpenO, OpenBaton, and TAC. Mm-hmm. Well, 4, to start with something that is crucial for NFVs. I mean, when you're trying to address something that is crucial, it's a logical approach that you have several ways of dealing with that, on the one hand. On the other hand, the orchestration is very much associated precisely to the organization and the internals of the users, the operators in this case, and to the use cases we are addressing that are not the same in all cases. We are not starting attacking the network transformation at the same places in our networks, and that makes that there is a clear need for a certain variety.
Do you agree with that analysis?
Well, I think history actually plays a matter here. Basically, the management and orchestration area has been rather proprietary in the past in the native deployment. So the different operators sit with a rather different situation. In that situation, where you also need to remember that anything becoming virtualized is a small portion of virtualization in a big sea or native deployment, you need to do a management and orchestration that is working with your old and previous environment. So I think it's a natural response to the different environments that the different operators are having. Plus another factor also, as Diego mentioned, very much of the values that could be created from the virtualized network functions are from automation and all of this. And automation for deployment and so on is actually very much about how you do the management and orchestration. So if you should tie Docker and Kubernetes in some sort of a PaaS layer with some sort of orchestration, you need to have that as interfaces being defined between the two. And in that area, there is a lot of things that needs to be standardized and open sourced. So I think we basically see these open source foras as a result of the operator's different situation. For us as a vendor, it becomes a bit challenging, of course, to do multiple products where basically then everything that follows on, distributed cloud and automation needs to follow. So I understand why it happens. I hope we can create a reference in OPNFV and align our industry there, and that's very much our strategy to this aspect.
Thank you. Deng Hui, you haven't said anything yet, but please do. Are you in agreement with your colleagues?
Yeah, I basically agree both of them. And so I think that's correct. We came from like more than thousands of the OSS, then coming to today we have just only 4. This is a big step. I mean, not just a step back, right? So coming back, I mean, so different orchestrator has a different position. I think like Tucker, he's only OpenStack only related, and OSM is MANO related. But for OpenO, we came from like the service oriented. I mean, we are thinking both SDN orchestrator and also NFV orchestrator. So on top of them, we need or says, I mean, customer-facing global service orchestrator over there. That is not existing today for the MANO. For that part, I think we are targeting different position, and we came from different background. And for OpenO, we try to not only, because we are supporting some tier 2, tier 3 operators, they are not a really strong house development team. And then they can rely on this open orchestrator and to support their, I mean, they are less developers, but they can really do the innovation of the service and also do the flexibility of the VF onboarding and also service onboarding. This kind of, I mean, the really transformation, you don't necessarily go down to the VF development, you don't need to go to the Australia development. You can focus on your own DevOps, right? So that's the motivation for the open orchestrator. So I think for the vendor, you do not need to worry about because you just need to support the interface. You don't necessarily need to support the code of them.
Can I ask you then, gentlemen, from your knowledge of what's going on either as service providers or vendors, these varieties of Open MANO, what are the main differences between them? Are they easily identifiable and are they open to other service providers as well?
Or the main differences between, you mean between what we have now?
Yeah.
I would say that first of all is about the priorities. How do, which are the priorities in the development and which are the first goals that you want to achieve and how you want to structure precisely the successive releases of the software. Precisely because you're trying to solve problems at different levels and problems for different segments of the networks and addressing different use cases. So as Ruben was saying before, the idea that, for example, in the case of OpenO, they're considering very much the integration with customers and with the service, customer-facing services, exactly. Right? For example, we are very much concerned to start with the proper resource orchestration. And this is something that makes, on the one hand, I mean, we OSM, just to put the... So on the one hand, that makes things curious because it signs very clearly why the different approaches happen. And on the other hand, make both approaches probably compatible in the long run. Because you're looking at a certain part of the architecture, and we're looking at a different part of the architecture, and that helps in avoiding probably some kind of a race to cover more space.
The point I was going to make is you're all starting from a different place, but you're not necessarily racing to a defined finish. Would you say that's right? In terms of you as individual companies, service providers and so on?
Yeah, I mean, for the moment, I mean, and my view on what is open source projects, you don't have a clear finish line defined. What you have is different stages, like in the Tour de France, like so.
King of the mountain.
Exactly. Yeah. One by one, yeah. And so the problem is that the initial finish lines for that day stage are different in the different projects.
Do you agree, gentlemen?
Well, I think you can find some different principal approaches to all of this with virtualization. Some of them are building very much of a controller-based architecture, and typical example of that is the cord architecture, where you really want to sort of stay within a controller for the full virtualization. And then such operators has very often also built their own virtualization environment. That also leads to that the MANO architecture becomes rather different. Then we have more the approach of OpenStack and so on, where you limit the impact of controllers and are more going to programmable switches and that kind of solutions. And there you have another group of operators coming then with specific requirements. Then it's also some operators that has been building historically very much on OSS for their competitiveness. So they've had systems where they can actually launch one service in all of their network overnight and invested enormous amount of money to achieve that. And they want to go very directly into the automation and also bring the radio network, which is obviously not virtualized, into the picture. So maybe these three different areas are sort of main categories of how you want to build up a MANO and orchestration environment.
Thank you. Dagui.
Yeah, so I definitely think there are some similarity. For example, we both using Juju for the we have a manager, and we have, as I said in the beginning, is we are considering the ground field for the SDN orchestration. It's a connectivity, because we are talking not just today. We are not talking about virtualization. Virtualization doesn't make money for the operator. We need to talk about the services. Service help operators to be convinced to start deploy SDN and NFV. So once we deploy the services, we need to consider, okay, we need to go one step beyond with the MANO. So that's a little bit different. I think people sooner or later, we start from a different position, but sooner or later we come to the final destination, common place.
Yes, but I would like to comment there on making money. If you look it's important. If you look on an important service for operators like a LAN interconnect service, I would claim today that most operator needs some 3 months or something to actually create a LAN interconnect between two enterprise offices within the same enterprise, or maybe to their data center. With automation and the right level of MANO, that can be done overnight, or even by a click or something like that. I would say overnight. And that's the kind of solutions that the right MANO architecture are enabling. And that will lead directly to that the competitiveness of an operators versus Amazon or other data center providers are going up. And I think therefore MANO is the first area where the virtualization will start to make money for the operators. And that's why I think we see all of these open source for us. It's so critical to hit the point where virtualization can mean something for the top line.
Yes, I totally agree what he talking here about automation. I think the virtualization NFV today is really not the 100% automation. What is most important missing part at this moment, I think, is how you can do the service configuration. So if without the service or configuration, this is not really the automation. So I think this is thing for 3 or 4 of us need to consider. And I think AT&T brought ideas. He already done something about to integrate the service configuration into the e-com. But for us, we are also looking into this. But how can we? Because service modeling is not in this world. It's not yet. I mean, he is most people familiar with. So we trust them to do service configuration. We cannot do by modeling the service configuration. That is the missing part. I hope we can work with them in the future to change the world.
No, I think all of the points that you're making is really, underlining why the MANO attention is so high. And I think that, if I would have a wish for the future and alignment, it should be more that we start with rather much a common virtualization environment. I understand that we end up in different MANO, but if at least the telecom industry could have a rather similar virtualization environment, then I think we much faster could create value for the operators, because there is no one that is selecting neither Telefonica or China Mobile as a service provider because they have the virtualization environment A or B. It's just a machinery that needs to be there and should be doing its job smoothly, swiftly, and efficient.
Agree.
Diego, you're uncharacteristically quiet.
No, I mean, no. It's as a general principle, yes. There are some cases in which, if you think that with addressing virtualization, addressing automation, addressing orchestration in general, you're opening as well other possibilities for businesses. It's not only, you were mentioning before about competing with Amazon, for example. Precisely having an integrated cloud plus communication services, etc., is something that is very appealing for us. In that respect, in some cases, at least the interfaces you're offering to your customers, because we will be able, I'm not sure if we will do that, but we will be able to offer APIs into our networks to certain customers at least, providing all the security and control and accountability, etc. In that case, probably precisely the kind of MANO you have, the kind of interfaces you are able to offer, the kind of objects that you will be able to manipulate, or the methods that you will allow your users to invoke, will make a difference. will make a difference. I mean, in the choice of the.
I completely agree that the development environment that you're able to offer your customers, your enterprise customers, the network slices, the Internet of Things, it's directly leading to 5G. And that development environment is another key portion of the virtualization. You have the development environment, the onboarding environment, and then the execution environment. The onboarding needs to happen where you put up all the dependencies between the old network, the legacy network, the new portions, and what you can offer then as a development environment for your customers will determine how deep you can really go with the different industry verticals. And that is, I would say, the next step when we have line upon MANO. So the development environment, I agree, and those APIs are very much value creating. Yeah. And you know, I don't know where the finish line is either, but I know our direction at least, and that direction towards offer operators a fantastic development environment with integrated KPIs between the connectivity, the data centers, is of course one of the targets that we need to hit in this journey.
Yeah, I think looking at the use case of Open Orchestrator, the first release, so we are looking at how we integrate the public cloud, either this operators cloud or the Amazon or even VMware. So when we connect those, so what is the value of the operator? We have the connections. So we cannot really compete with them about the public cloud for the data center part, but we are still running that. But I think the value what we have is the connections. The connections means the SDN part. So we can make a network undemanding, and we can provide more flexible of the API you mentioned here, but also, I mean, the different charging, different quality of services, the many things we can provide for our connections. So just doing only public cloud competing, we cannot win them, but we have to bring the connections together with our cloud. Then we can provide more flexible for agility, for opening innovation. So that's what you said. We are fighting for our future life. I'm still young. I need the future growth. I mean, so that I agree. I agree.
Even if you're not young, you have to fight for your pension anyway.
That's also future life.
Exactly.
Now, let's move on because we've only got about 5 minutes more to go, and I've got a couple more questions I want to ask you. One of which relates to the number of organisations and bodies that are involved in this. How do OPNFV, OpenStack, Etsy, and so on help in supporting the various initiatives that we've been talking about? Again, I don't know who wants to start with this. It's an opportunity.
I have started two other.
You know, I was going to ask you. Don't worry, not you.
Yeah, I can start. So I think OpenStack is really good. I mean, the open source reference architectures. When we do Orchestrator, any interface to the OpenStack is already there, and the operator do not need to specify the standard interface for the OpenStack because it's really sophisticated. And I think the ETSI is a little bit slower than OpenStack, right? So because we do not have when we do Orchestrator, we found out that this open source hasn't existed yet. So then the ETSI work is really valuable. The information model, we can look at the information model, and then we come back when we do the implementation. So the ETSI is very important. And after we finish our implementation and we do some interoperability testing, so we feed back to the ETSI to let them to finish the much better specification. So specification means the telecom strong, the value of our past life. So we still believe we are embracing the open source, but we still trust our, competitive, the standard interface to let the vendors to help us to compete with other people. So I think that is, also OPNFV is absolutely very good place as well, because for our MFO orchestration, I think it helps us a lot about the modern driven part, the modeling, the Toscas, the young modeling. So the OPNFV is the right place to coordinate the multiple open source orchestrator and also multiple vendors to help them to implement the common language.
Thank you. Martin?
Now, I would like to say that sometimes we tend to forget sort of the basic principles of innovation. One of them is the OSI model, for instance, where development on layer 3 has been able to be done without really looking into the underlying protocols. And that separation in terms of an architecture means that innovation can happen on each layer independently of each other. That is very important to preserve, and to keep the architecture up is sort of the most important job for OpenStack OPNFV, so that we really don't have any dependencies of the different layers in this telecom world. I think that both forums are working very much in that direction, and that more and more companies understand, except for example what Dr. Deng was mentioning here, the APIs that are really independent on each layer. And in that aspect, these forums are absolutely critical to maintain an architecture that allows really a journey towards innovation, where these dependencies are so key, so important to keep away. You really should be able to do innovation on each layer one by one.
Thank you. Diego, you have to say something now.
Yeah. No, I will. No, first of all, it's a no to something that was said on this idea of OpenStack being faster than it. Probably a couple of years ago it was the case. OpenStack is not fast any longer. I mean, fast in answering all the requirements that are reaching them from very, very, very different places. It's not that it's not fast in general, maybe it is, but in addressing all the requirements, they had to prioritize. And in this prioritization, my impression is that precisely the NFV and the telco environment is not the one that is at the top of the list. So that implies that in some cases we had to go for our own solutions. That is nothing wrong. While this becomes completely upstream, you can do your stuff on your own. And this is one of the reasons why we are running our these projects. This is a first reflection. Second reflection is that I fully agree with this idea that there is a clear, as long as we manage to keep a clear separation of concerns, things would be okay. And so far, I think that they are not bad. Coming here, I was having the opportunity to discuss with one of the participants on some idea he has precisely on moving on the standardization of data and information models and using precisely OPNFV as it is somewhere in the statement about OPNFV as the fair playground to play with the standardization and to demonstrate that the different pieces, because that's the goal of OPNFV is essentially, it's a place to integrate and to play with the different parts and at the end up with something that is can be reasonably assured that will work together. And so this would be the idea that taking those information models, implementing them in different places, coming here, make a project, see what happens.
You've led me beautifully on to the last question, which is a short, sharp and sweet one, which is, remember we were looking at this multiple approaches, one goal. We've agreed that there's not necessarily a race. We've agreed there is a finishing point, a finishing line. Do we agree that OPNFV is helping, is instrumental in bringing that notion of the single goal, as far as MANO is concerned, to fruition? Each of you just say a couple of words on it. Yes, no, maybe, whatever. What do you think?
OPNFV, the way we see it, is our strategy to actually achieve exactly that. So this is where we hope that we, as a telecom industry, could come together. As a comment on speed of OpenStack and so on, we need to remember that we are 10% of the IT industry in sort of top line. We will not be prioritized in all of these underlying forums. We have to accept it. Therefore, we need OPNFV. And without OPNFV, I think everything will go slower and worse. And we really hope to create that alignment on the IP level that Dr. Deng was mentioning here, very much in OPNFV. So we are keen, Ericsson is keen to work within OPNFV.
Right, so I think the OPNFV today is, if you look at the OPNFV testing environment, it's mostly a server-based, right? So when we do the open orchestrator, we talking about telecom infrastructure. So there are many devices other than servers only, right? Because we are coming from the ground field. So those part of the OPNFV is amazing here. So then I think we need to bring the NFVO for virtualized part. The OPNFV is the right place. I say yes for NFVO.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, what I like very much is this idea of OPNFV being an open and fair playground. But this is why what I would say is let's play, let's have fun, and let's make money, which is important as well.
Yeah, let's hope both get attention. Okay.
Exactly.
You?
And the future life?
Yeah, I also want the future life and retirement. So let's be productive.
Big obsession with pensions, but you all look far too young for it, I must say. But that was a really, really excellent, interesting little chat. So Martin Backstrom, Deng Hui, and Diego Lopez, thank you all very much indeed. Great stuff. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.